Yo guys, what is up? Max on Borderlands 3 video, and today I have a very mediocre, very unspecial, not very good build to show off to you guys. If you're a Gearbox employee, there's no reason in continuing watching anymore because nothing is going on here out of the ordinary, I can assure you. Now that they've left, guys, this build is insane. This is one of the craziest things we've done on Amara. If you guys did not know, Game Breaker took a big nerf. White elephants were nerfed by 75% of their damage. The fish slap was nerfed by 50% of its damage, and we had to come up with something new. This build is going to be the build that I take into the raid boss on Amara, and if you guys haven't tried this, you're going to need to. If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like, comment, and subscribe. And with that, guys, let's get into this build. Alright guys, so before I can showcase the skill tree and the gear, we need to talk about the mechanic that is at play here for this build, and it's something that I've never showcased on this channel before. I've never showed in a video. Now, I did not discover this mechanic. It was discovered by Chadley99, who's an awesome YouTuber. I'll have his description, or his channel in the description, and then CZ47 took that mechanic and made an Amara build out of it, and I'm here to showcase that for you guys, so I can't take any credit for it, but I am able to show it for you guys because it's freaking awesome. Now, the biggest new thing here is this elemental critical hits cause status effects of that element to explode, creating a Nova that deals 500% of that status effects damage. Now, this is an ointment I've never used in a build before because I didn't like it. However, the way that this works on Amara with infusion, we allow our Psycho Stabber to now do fire damage if we're using infusion, and you absolutely need infusion here. This makes your Psycho Stabber do elemental damage, which means that it can proc elemental critical hits, cause a status effect. Now, the super interesting mechanic that Chadley discovered is that when you apply this critical hit, it takes into account the dot that is already on the enemy, if there already is one. So if I shoot at an enemy and they're already taking a huge dot, it's going to trigger a 500% explosion that scales off of splash damage on that enemy. And what we're doing here is we're using a stinger, which is the highest melee damage that we can trigger in the game, because it gets melee Nova, shield Nova scaling. The stinger is ridiculous if you guys did not know. We're using it with action skill start, procs a melee Nova. Then we're using the Unleash the Dragon. The Unleash the Dragon artifact triggers off of melee damage, and it is a 100% guaranteed chance to dot the enemy, and it's going to scale off of our stinger shield. So this alone is going to proc a 200 million, 300 million damage dot on an enemy. It is a ridiculous dot, and literally nothing in the game will survive a 390 dot from this stinger with Unleash the Dragon. However, and what I showcased today is that dot on an enemy, that 200 million damage stinger dot with Unleash the Dragon, holding a 390 Psycho Stabber, boosting melee damage. If you then swap to a pistol Psycho Stabber that has critical hits cause status effects of that element to explode, it's going to take that 200 million damage dot and proc a 500% Nova that gets rescaling of that damage, and it just blows out anything in the game. It does so much damage that I wasn't able to actually showcase it very well at all because nothing in this game has enough health. So I downloaded a mod by Lone Master Reno, who's an awesome person, and he showed me how to remove immune phases, or he made a mod that removes immune phases. It didn't totally remove them, so like Psycho Reaver still had immune phases and Wotan still had one immune phase, but I was able to showcase that this build is ridiculous and is going to be my build that I use when the raid boss comes out, because we don't know if it'll just be able to be one shot or whatever, but I'm confident that this is going to be the build to do it. Now, in terms of like skill tree and gear, it does change for mobbing and bossing. To get to Wotan, you have to kill a bunch of enemies. So CZ sent me a mobbing setup and a bossing setup, and we're going to talk about both of those. Right now on screen should be the mobbing setup. Now, the mobbing setup, the biggest difference between the mobbing setup and the bossing setup for this build, and the mobbing setup is what I would use to go do a takedown. The bossing setup is what I would use for the raid boss, and we're going to showcase them both briefly. The biggest difference is the mobbing setup goes all the way down to Avatar. We go all the way down to Avatar because we need our action skill, and we're using Eternal Fist, which every time it moves to a new target triggers the Stinger Nova. We need to have that as much as possible. On top of just being a really strong melee build, we need this Stinger Nova proccing Unleash the Dragon so that we can run around. And when you're mobbing, nothing's going to have enough health to actually use this elemental critical hits. You don't need to swap, nothing's going to survive, so you can just run around with the Psycho Stabber. However, for bossing, we're going to switch to a bossing skill tree, meaning that we take all of our points out of blue tree, and we move them all into green tree, and that skill tree should be showing on screen now. This is the bossing setup. I'll switch over to that character in a second, but even without the bossing setup, like I was using the mobbing setup on Wotan, and like you guys could see how much ridiculous damage it is. The biggest thing that you want to do on both setups, though, if you're doing any sort of big enemy killing, is proc your damage with like a phase cast on the enemy, holding the 390 and respect into a ton of swap speed so that we can proc that, swap weapons, and then shoot crit. You shoot that crit and anything will die. For mobbing, we're just running around spamming Eternal Fist and punching things. With our Psycho Stabber, you can also use a 390 face puncher and just shoot everything, but it is absolutely crazy. The next best thing on this build is Clear the Mind, and Clear the Mind is super important because we're dealing in fire damage dots. A lot of the enemies in the game, the big enemies, have armor bars. And fire does 50% less damage to them. However, with Clear the Mind, we can ignore elemental damage resistances and make this fire dot work for any enemy that we want to kill. Getting Clear the Mind, super important. Getting Infusion, super important. Tempest, Illuminated Fist. For the bossing setup, which I'll switch to right now, I'll show that off. So for the bossing setup, the biggest thing that changes is we're going all the way down to green tree. It looks something like this. That way we can get as much melee damage as possible. Because this dot is going to scale off of our melee damage, we're changing skills to burn both ends, getting blitz, find your center, as much melee damage as we can. And this is the skill tree that I'm going to be taking into the raid boss. We're only getting one use of our phase cast, so make sure that you're as close to the enemy as possible to trigger that dot and then swap. We could go do a quick little Psycho Reaver kill. Now, I could not hold 390. If I'm holding 390, the dot alone is just going to kill the first phase of Psycho Reaver. Here, like, it's just so fast. So, like, that I don't need it for. We could just not use 390, but that's part of the reason why I used Lone Master Reno's mod, is so that I could showcase it. Now, for this part of Psycho Reaver, he's too far away for me to hit with the Stinger, and that's what the Fish Slap comes into play. The Fish Slap is melee damage. It'll proc Unleash the Dragon. Unfortunately, the Fish Slap got nerfed, so it doesn't do as much damage, but now I can throw my Fish Slap so that he gets dotted. As soon as he gets dotted by the Unleash the Dragon dot, I could try to hit the crit. As soon as I hit that crit, it triggers that damage nova, and boom. I know this video's a little bit complicated, but if you guys understand this mechanic of getting the damage off, getting the dot off, doing the elemental crit, you will be amazing and do just fine for this raid boss. The biggest other thing that we do is we swap to a Muse class mod for bossing. Muse is the best melee damage we can get. You want to Muse with as much melee damage as you can possibly get. And for mobbing, we use the Phase Zerker. Phase Zerker with as much points into anima is going to be key for you. I don't know if I have one. There it is. As much points into anima for that dot duration and dot damage is going to be the best thing you can get. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I know I rambled a little bit. If you guys have any questions, be sure to leave a comment or drop it into the Twitch streams, because I'll be using this and explaining this build further. And I will catch you guys in the next one. Take care. Peace.